Ducks fans, are you ready? You are listening to the Ducks and Pucks podcast with your hosts, Mike Walters and Eddie Jones. This is the number one home for Anaheim Ducks talk and analysis. Here we go.
Welcome to the show. This is your host, Mike Walters, along with my co-host, Eddie Jones. And if you're a Ducks fan this week, you have to be extremely happy. The Ducks re-signed Hampus Lindholm. They also beat Nashville in a revenge game, for the playoff loss last year. And they also just came off a 4-0 win against LA. So a very good week for the Ducks. We're going to talk about the last 4 games that they played in. We're going to preview the games coming up. We're going to take some fan questions as well. But let's get to the best part of this week, Eddie. The Ducks re-signed Hampus Lindholm to a 6-year deal, just over $30 million. And finally, it's done. The fans can put away the pitchforks, as we joked about this week, and we can look forward to Hampus coming probably in a week or so and getting the Ducks full team back together.
Yeah, and Bob Murray's kind of sticking it to Claude Lemieux here, holding out for the 5.25 kind of team friendly. Oh, I guess you can't even say kind of team friendly. It's a really, really good deal for the Ducks as a team to get. Obviously, it's a good deal for Lindholm too to be here for the next 6 years, and I think, squabbling over $250,000. Although that does add up to $1.5 million over that 6-year period. It's still a lot of money, but I mean, in a contract, you look at guys we signed for more than that. You look at, that's less than bowl money, less than, so I've seen a lot of tweets saying that. So to fight over $250,000 for so long was, a little bit of annoying to watch from the outside. But of course, it's nice to finally have it done, and to have him for the next 6 years really helps solidify the core that is already here, and obviously the core on the blue line that's going to be here for the future. So I think it's important that they finally got it done. Obviously, it would be nice to have him as soon as possible, but of course he's got to go through the same visa issues that Rakell had to go through to get here. The good thing is, though, is he's healthy and he's been practicing. There's no injury issue like we saw with Rakell. We don't have to wait for him to come back. When he hits the ice at Honda Center, he'll be ready to go for the next game. So I think it'll be good to get him back. I think we've seen in some games, especially the game in Columbus and a couple games early on in the season, we can really use his presence back there. And you look at how this team has performed so far. 4-4-2 isn't great, but when you don't have arguably your best defenseman and one of your best forwards in the lineup, to do that, to have that record this far in the season, I'm not complaining.
Yeah, I agree with you, Eddie. I mean, the Ducks started out not so great, losing a majority of the opening games, but they've turned it on, in this last stretch of games, which we'll talk about here. But, I have to tell you that I'm just extremely excited with the way that the deal went down with Lindholm. I mean, obviously it didn't get done in the summer like we wanted. It took too long, just like with Rakell. They both took during the summertime, which we had hoped that they were both going to be the ones done first, and instead they end up being the two that are done last. But at the amount of money that was being talked about, over the summer, we heard Bob McKenzie talking about between $5 million and $7 million, and then it got narrowed down more to 5 and 6. For the Ducks and Murray to get this deal done with Lindholm at $5.25 million, I mean, I was shocked. I really thought it was going to be 5.5, 5.6, maybe somewhere in there. So I just think that this is a huge win for the Ducks. They're able to keep everybody on the team for now, which we'll talk about that later too. We've got some fan questions talking about future trades. But as far as the situation now, having Thompson and Dupre on long-term injury reserve, they created cap space of just over $5 million, which was just enough to get Lindholm done. And I just think that this was a win for everybody all the way around, Eddie.
Yeah, they're sitting at just over 1.4, I think it says, per cap friendly with the long-term injury reserve. So him signing for that, lower than what we expected definitely helps their flexibility. In realism, without the long-term injury reserve, they don't have any cap space, but you having that flexibility, and unfortunately with Dupre getting hurt, it actually helps out the team in that situation and getting Lindholm signed. And like you said, it gives them a little bit more time to decide if they're going to make a trade or not. And obviously we're going to get into that a little bit later here, but it's great. I mean, we talked about when this all started way back, around the draft and even before that, we would expect him to get at least 5.5, if not closer to 6. And you look at, especially even when Ristolainen got signed, I was like, Bob McKenzie said that, we said it, like that's probably the minimum he gets is 5.5. Him getting anything lower than that would be ridiculous to even think of. And then he comes out and he gets 250,000 lower than that. I think that's a huge win for Bob Murray and for the Ducks. And as much as we said it, you just got to get this guy done. You got to get him signed. Don't worry about the price. I think it's kudos to Bob Murray for sticking to his guns and getting him for the price that he got him for.
Yeah, absolutely. And Murray gets criticized here and there for some of the deals that have done in the past. And, we know that he's not perfect, but I have to be extremely happy with the way that he got things done with Rakell and Lindholm. I mean, both of those were deals that took a while to get done. And at least that, they finally got finished. Maybe not exactly when we wanted them to get done, but they're done. The team's going to be complete. Obviously, we saw Rakell come back last night, which we'll talk about in a minute. Lindholm will be back in a little bit. But let's look at these games this last week or so. The Ducks, they started out obviously losing the opening 4 games, and then they beat Philly and Vancouver. And then they went on a short, flight to Northern California against San Jose first before coming back home. And the Ducks played in this game. And unfortunately, they lost this one, Eddie. This game was a tight game against San Jose. San Jose scored first. Wagner got on the board again, which is great to see. He's starting to score some goals in a Ducks uniform, not a Colorado Avalanche uniform. So that was good to see. But unfortunately, he had a pass deflected in the overtime, and that led to San Jose winning this game. The Ducks did pick up a point, but kind of a missed opportunity here. You would have liked to see them, get both points with San Jose ahead of them and playing pretty well this season.
Yeah, I think they did well to hold on in this game. They struggled, even with their dominant effort in the face-off dot, they struggled to generate a lot of shots in this game. They hit well. They out-hit San Jose 36-11. They won 61% of the face-offs. They limited the amount of giveaways they had, but they just couldn't generate shots. They only got 20 shots on net, and I mean, lucky enough that Wagner got a goal and they were able to get a point in overtime, but their effort offensively just wasn't there, and it looked like for most of the game they were just trying to hold on and to at least get to overtime and get that point. And you even saw it in the last 10-15 seconds that Vatanen was just holding the puck behind the net, and they were trying to kill off the time to get that point. So I mean, obviously it's great that they got the point. You would like to get 2, and obviously to lose on I guess a giveaway by Wagner in overtime is disappointing, but I think in all, it was an okay effort. It wasn't great, and you would expect to see a better effort against a team like San Jose, and where these games where they're pretty much you're playing for 4 points in the long run. But I think grabbing a point and getting at least something out of this game, I think was good for them.
Yeah, and the other part of this game that was kind of unfortunate is Bernier went out after the first period of play, and he hasn't come back yet, which we can kind of talk about now. But they've had to call up Tokarski, to back up, and he even backed up last night in L.A. So Bernier was out with an upper body injury. They didn't really say what play it looked like that could have happened on, but there was the goal that was scored by Pavelski, which this is the one where they replayed it. It looked like the post came off, and it was questionable. I didn't like the call, honestly. If you go back and you look at this play, I mean, I don't think it's a goal. But the way that the NHL works, and you and I have talked about this on goals from before, is whatever the first call is, it almost always stands unless they have 100% conclusive evidence. But on that play, we can talk about that and Bernier. Bernier, made some crazy block and kind of bent in a weird position. So I'm thinking that was the play maybe where he got that upper body injury. I'm not sure 100%. I'm just going back looking at all the plays in the first period. That was the one where he kind of, just got bent in a weird position. So I think that's where he got hurt. And like I said, the goal, I don't know. I thought the post was off before it went across. But, if the first call's made and they can't overturn it conclusively, then that's the call that stands.
Yeah, and it's a weird call. We've I haven't you don't see it often, but you see it enough that you can kind of see how awkward of a decision it can be for the refs at times. Because I mean, it seems like from me watching it is that the peg just has to be touching the net itself, and as long as it's still touching it, if the puck crosses the line, it goes in. It's a weird one because the net could look like it's off or it could be crooked, even with it being still touching the post, and then it would count. I'm not too sure if it's a rule they're going to change in the future. I wasn't happy like you with the call either. I think, if the net's off and crooked like that, it shouldn't count even if it is still technically in the peg by a small margin. But, obviously it's disappointing that one, the goal does get called, and two, not Tokarski, sorry, Bernier gets hurt on the play, and we have to call up Tokarski because it makes, we'll talk about it when we go into preview the games, but it makes today's game against Pittsburgh. We could see Gibson again. Well, you never know. I mean, the way he's been playing lately, obviously, you never really see, especially in today's NHL. Guy said it yesterday. You don't really see a goalie play back-to-backs anymore. So, Tokarski, you would assume would play today, but you never know, especially with how Gibson's been playing lately, especially last night.
Yeah, and that's a good point, because the Ducks went to San Jose. They played this game, lost in overtime. Gibson came in, basically played 2/3 of a game, plus the overtime. The Ducks go back home. They play Nashville, the next day, and Gibson starts. And this is the payback game. Obviously Nashville knocking us out of the playoffs. The Ducks come out in this game. They play well in the first period. They get one goal by Ritchie. Again, Ritchie's also starting to score too, which is good for the Ducks. And, after the first period, it's 1-0. You're thinking, okay, good. Ducks are doing well. And then second period comes along, and, I mean, the Ducks just blow out Nashville. I mean, you have Silverberg gets 2 goals right away. Perry and Cogs both get goals. They both lead the team with 4 through last night's game. And, Kessler adds one in there too. And I mean, the Ducks just destroyed Nashville in this game. I mean, they won in the faceoffs. They were 3 or 4 on the power play. I mean, aside from last night's game against LA, this was the best game that the Ducks played in the season. I mean, they just steamrolled Nashville. And to me, this was impressive, Eddie, because Gibson played in back-to-back games. The team played as well, obviously, in back-to-back games, losing to San Jose, and then to come home and take it to Nashville, after, of course, last year's playoff loss, which we don't really want to talk about that, but they came out and they did what they needed to do, and this was a big statement game for the Ducks, Eddie, and they really lit it up in this contest.
Yeah, and they got scoring from all throughout the lineup and from both sides of special teams. I mean, they got 2 shorthanded goals and 3 power play goals in this game, which was huge for them, obviously, and they obviously get the 1-on-5-on-5. But everybody had a point in this game except pretty much the fourth line, and then Wagner. Wagner didn't have a point. Edom didn't have a point. Bull and Cramarosa, but other than them, everybody else had at least 1 point. And I think Silverberg had a great game this game. Like you said, he had a power play goal and a shorthanded goal. Cogliano had a shorthanded goal as well. Kessler power play goal. Ritchie had a power play goal, and then Perry gets the unassisted one on 5-on-5. And I think this is up until that point, this was their best game of the season so far. They dominated in every aspect. They out-hit them. They obviously did a lot better on the power play. Their penalty kill was okay. They dominated in faceoffs again, which we've seen all season so far. So I think this was just a great game by them. They come out in the second period and have one of the best second periods we've seen them play in a long time. I think second periods have been such an issue for the Ducks over the last few seasons. To see them come out and score 5 goals in a second period and kind of put that to rest was great for them. And I think this has to be their best game, and it kind of set the precedent for the next. Obviously, not the Columbus game after that, but even with that game, I think they came into it later on. But you see some of that, some of the same style of play when they go into and they went to play LA last night.
Yeah, I mean, I was impressed really in the second period. I mean, Pekka Rinne gets knocked out of the game. I mean, I wish we could have had this as our game 7 last year. I mean, this is the way that we needed them to play. I mean, the Ducks just destroyed them. I mean, I thought the Ducks would come out strong and play them hard, but with Nashville getting PK Subban and having their team still, not too much different from last year. I mean, I still thought this was going to be a pretty competitive game, and then the second period, I mean, the Ducks just went nuts. I mean, I remember sitting there trying to get all the videos in time because every time it was like, goal, 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 goal. I mean, there was just that span there where they had, 3 goals in, just over 4 minutes to break this thing wide open towards the end of the second period there. And I mean, you saw Fowler getting some assists as well, and he's doing well in the team. We're going to be talking about him and this whole Lindholm situation coming up as well. But yeah, this was a great game, especially back to back. Traveling back home and winning, and just all around a great performance. And seeing all those power play shorthanded goals, setting that kind of record, I mean, that's just crazy when you see a team get that many special team goals, especially shorthanded. I mean, you have to look at Coggiano shorthanded. I mean, he's just amazing. You see him out there. He's always chipping the puck away, beating the guys on the way back on the counter punch. And it's just huge. I mean, Cogs is just a machine shorthanded. I mean, it just cracks me up. It's almost like, you just rather have him, playing shorthanded than on any other situation. But I mean, that's just the way he is. He does great. And, the Ducks looked really good. And then they had Columbus come on the following Friday there, 2 days after. And then I just don't know what happened, but the first period in this game, Eddie, was just like the reverse of that Ducks second period. They just got blown out. The first 10 minutes wasn't so bad. It was 0-0 hockey, and then they gave up 4 goals in 4 minutes, and they just couldn't recover in this game.
It was pretty much just 4 minutes of the game where it just didn't go their way, and then from there on, Bobrovsky stole the show for them, and he pitched them to a 35 save shutout. And I mean, it wasn't it's hard to say that it wasn't the worst game of the season because they did lose 4-0, but really they played a solid game for 56 minutes, and then they had a stretch of 4 minutes there where they just couldn't handle them, and Columbus just punished them. They were quicker than them. They were getting to the front of the net. They were wide open. I mean, there was the one shot that Brandon Saad had. I mean, nobody was stopping that. I mean, that was just a great shot to the top corner. I mean, it hit the camera. It went off the post and hit the camera. There's nothing.
Yeah, they had to review it
like that. Yeah, so
yeah,
I mean, there's not much you can do on that. But I mean, it happens. There's times where one team is just that much better than you for a small period of time, and the Ducks were just very, very unlucky where they got scored on 4 times, and it's hard to come back for that. And when you have a goalie like Bobrovsky that like Columbus does, I mean, he's been great so far this season, and he was just unbelievable in this game for them, and the Ducks just couldn't they just needed the one goal to get back into it, and they just couldn't get one by him. And obviously it's a disappointing loss, especially coming off beating Nashville 6-0, but I mean, it's just kind of 4 minutes that just killed them for this game.
Yeah, I mean, Saad with the 2 goals in there, Gagne with the 2 goals in there. I mean, they just took it to the Ducks in the beginning of the period, and then after that, I mean, the Ducks, they played better in the second and third. They just, they just couldn't get anything going offensively. They didn't have too many, quality chances. I mean, they had 35 shots on net. They still won on the faceoffs. 0-4 on the power play, couldn't get that going. Even saw Tokarski coming in this game, in the third period with about 10 minutes left. So he got a little bit of action, which, after this game he went down and then he came back up again because Bernier practiced the last couple of days this week, but he wasn't ready. So Tokarski came back up. And he backed up Gibson in the Ducks game against LA last night. And I mean, it's just kind of been up and down these last couple of games. But you have this game against Columbus where nothing goes right in the first period, and the Ducks play a little bit better. Still can't punch one through, but then they go to LA, and then it's just also another great game by them. They outplay them. Not too much in the first period. I mean, they get the 1-0 lead just like they did against Nashville in the first period. And then this time the Ducks, they turned it on in the second period. And that's where they really took it to the Kings, which, I was a little surprised. I mean, the Kings have been without Jonathan Quick, but they've had Budaj playing in net, and, his goals against was 1.99 entering this game. The Ducks only had 21 shots on net, but they really took it to the Kings in this game, Eddie. I mean, physically and on the scoreboard.
Yeah, and the Kings are just a weird team to watch play this season. Obviously, without Jonathan Quick, I mean, with him even they lost their first 3 games of the season. Budaj comes in and they win their next 4, and then now they've been shut out in each of their last 3 games, and it's just a weird team to watch right now. And the Ducks took advantage of that last night. I mean, they dominated in the faceoff dot. They didn't put a lot of shots on net, but the shots that they did have on net, Budaj had no chance, and they just played a great, solid game last night. And obviously Rakell coming back in his first game, we were talking in a little group chat before the game. We're like, well, I mean, we don't really expect Rakell to go out and do a ton tonight. He as long as he just comes out and plays a strong game and shows that he's ready to go, then that's fine. And then, I mean, he showed that and more in this game. He scored a goal and grabbed 2 assists as well. And the first 2 points he had were just were great plays. I mean, he had a great shot off the circle after Ryan Kessler won the face-off, and he made a great pass out to Vermette, who all he had to do was tap it in front of the net. And then even the play on Cramarosa's goal, it was a great little 1-2 in front of the net that allowed Cramarosa to get the speed he needed to wrap it around and bank it in off Martinez. So, I mean, just a great season debut for Rickard Rakell, and just a great game overall for everybody.
Yeah, and in this game, we had talked about this before, how when the Ducks had played the Sharks recently, there had been a lot of fights and physicality and all this stuff, and the Duck games are always physical against the Kings, but there hadn't been as many fights. And then in this game, it went crazy. I mean, you saw Bowl dropping them, right away early in the game. You saw it later on. The Kings got frustrated. They went after Getzlaf, and then you basically had a line brawl, and you had everybody picking apart and going at it. We posted all those videos on Twitter and whatnot. You can check them out, and in the game recap as well. And I mean, the Ducks just frustrated the Kings last night, and I mean, it was just great to see. And I mean, they just beat them. They physically and on the scoreboard. Like you said, Rakell, he helped out on 3 of the 4 Ducks goals, scoring 1 and assisting on the other 2, which was great to see. It was interesting too in the lineup, because we'll talk about that. We have a fan question, but in this game, Rakell played with Vermette, which was being talked about, and he played on the wing, which is what we had suspected. But it was kind of interesting, Eddie, in this game, because Vermette played center, and Rakell didn't play left wing. He played right wing, actually, technically. So that was kind of interesting to see. I mean, he can play all 3 positions, but, usually he does left wing or center. So that was kind of interesting, but, I mean, it worked out. He had a great game. I mean, obviously the Ducks are happy to have him back. And Cramarosa getting his first NHL goal, so congrats to him on that, too. It wasn't the prettiest goal, but you know what? We don't really care. I mean, those are the kind of goals that the Ducks need. You just got to get the puck in the front, throw it at the net, and get a deflection. I mean, and that's what the Ducks, sometimes they don't do enough of that. And I think if they can, create more plays like that and get goals like that, it's going to help them down the road in this season, Eddie.
Yeah, and I think, we'll probably see Rakell. I mean, Randy said at the end of the game, too, is we'll see Rakell in a couple different positions for the next few games until they find out where they really want to play him. And I think he played good on the right side with Vermette, and I think he played good when Richie went out with the Twins on the left side. So, I guess it's not a smart move. I think it's an obvious move to play him on the wing right now with how well the Ducks have been on the faceoff dot. I don't think you want to take Getzlaf, Kessler, or Vermette out of the center of the ice. I mean, Vermette actually had a bad game in the faceoff dot for once last night. He was only 43%, which is surprising with how good he's been lately. But I mean, if he was on last night, the Ducks probably would have won about 75% of the faceoffs, which would have been ridiculous. But I think something that might have been lost in this game too, though, is how good John Gibson was in this game. I mean, yeah, the Ducks won 4-0, but they got outshot 30-21, and John Gibson stopped every single shot in this game. He had a shutout, and I mean, he stopped some pretty good chances too. So I think it's great for him to get going, especially with Bernier out. And like I mentioned earlier, I mean, it'll be interesting to see if he goes again today. I mean, obviously he's had his struggles against Pittsburgh in the past. It's tough to come out and play a back-to-back. But obviously with no travel and with limited travel, obviously going from LA to Anaheim, it's pretty much like playing 2 home games back to back. There is a good chance that he could play today. I'm not sure, how high on they are on playing Tokarski today. It'll be interesting. Obviously, you don't want to play Gibson and then he gets hurt, and then you've got Tokarski as your number one guy right now. But it'll be interesting to see how they kind of go in and handle this game today.
Yeah, I mean, we'll post the stuff obviously throughout the day. Maybe Bernier is ready to go today. I don't know. I mean, we haven't heard. Obviously, he, wasn't good enough last night, so I don't think that's going to change. So, I mean, Gibson did pretty much go back to back with San Jose and Nashville. So he may go again tonight, but like you said, if there's any team that Gibson does not play well against, it's his hometown, Pittsburgh Penguins. I don't know what it is, but he just does not play well against them. So maybe Tokarski does get the call. But another thing in this game against the Kings that we saw, and we'll have to update and monitor, is Nick Ritchie. He took a very hard hit where his head got slammed against the glass. Which also started some more of the fisticuffs and whatnot in this game. So Ritchie had to go out. And like you said, Rakell went up with the Twins in the third period there. So hopefully he's not banged up too bad. He didn't come back and play after that in the game. So that's something that we're going to have to watch as well. And that would be unfortunate because, he's already gotten 2 goals, in just a handful of games this year as opposed to, last year when it took him forever to get 2 goals. So he's been playing better. And we'll have to, provide updates with that as well. But overall, other than that, it was a great game for the Ducks. Like you said, Gibson, shut him out, made some great saves here and there. 30 shots, it's nothing to, sniff at. He did great. The offense did great. The Ducks, I liked the way that they were standing up for each other. I was joking, you saw Bieksa go in there with the Vulcan death grip in his fight. It was pretty funny to see at the end there when he was basically grabbing, I forgot who it was, but he was grabbing the guy on the back of the neck. It was hilarious. So, great night for us, and if you're a Ducks fan, you're going into work today and you've got some coworkers like I do that are Kings fans. It's a nice day to walk in and go, hey, how about that game last night, and watch them probably roll their eyes and whatnot. But that's the way the Ducks need to play. And, what's good about these games too, Eddie, is when it does bring out the best in the Ducks. And I think this was the perfect game for the Ducks after playing Columbus and losing that game to come out in this game and get re-energized. I mean, I just think it's huge, especially going into this next week's games.
Yeah, and hopefully with Rakell coming back and eventually Lindholm coming back, you can build on that and get even better. And I think that's what they need right now. Obviously, since the 0-3-1 start, we look at that Columbus game, we're like, they went 2-1-1 in their last few games, and that Columbus game is kind of a blotch on a good record. But they've been 4-1-1 in their last 6 games. They picked up points in 5 of 6, and I think that's great for them after starting 0-3-1. The record doesn't really show it, obviously, them being 4-4-2 right now, but I think with the last 6 games and how they've played, even putting in the Columbus game into factor there, they played great hockey for everything but 4 minutes. So I mean, it's been a great last 6 games for them, and I think hopefully they can go into Pittsburgh today and continue it. It's obviously tough to play a back-to-back, especially after playing a physical and draining game like against the Kings, and then having to go and play the Stanley Cup champs. It's a really hard back-to-back to have to play. But I think it was good that the game went the way it did last night. They were able to rest a lot of the top guys for most of that third period. So I think that they'll come out a little bit fresher than you normally would in a game that's like a 2-1 or a 1-0 type of game. So I think if they can get off to a good start here and hopefully pick up to 2 points in this game, it will bode well for the next few games where they're playing a lot of teams who are struggling right now. They're playing Arizona. On Friday, they're playing Calgary at Honda Center. On Sunday, which we know is pretty much a guaranteed win when you play Calgary at Honda Center. And then they go on a little bit of a road trip and play Columbus, who hopefully a redemption game there. They play back-to-back and play Carolina on that Thursday, and then play Nashville to end the road trip on the Saturday. So I think it's after Pittsburgh, you've got 5 games, which if they're on a roll from there, I think 5 games that they have a real good shot at winning.
Yeah, I think, obviously the game against Pittsburgh is going to be the most difficult one. Like we said, back-to-back, you played a physical game against L.A. Sidney Crosby's back, and it's the Stanley Cup, defending champs. It's going to be a tough one tonight, I really think, against Pittsburgh. I mean, if the Ducks can pull this one out, like you said, after that, it's a little bit easier sledding. with Arizona on Friday and then Calgary on Sunday, which, knock on wood, we don't want to say it, but it's automatic. I forgot what the record is, but it's like 20 something plus games, I think, in a row that the Ducks have beaten Calgary. I think they've beaten Calgary at Anaheim since like the Stone Age or something like that. But they've pretty much taken it to them. So, but no games, given. But you do have to like the Ducks' schedule after the game against Pittsburgh. I really think that, that they can, make some headway in the division here, because you're going to be playing some teams that, they're not doing as well as you said. You look at Arizona; they're at the bottom of the division. They're 3-6. You look at Calgary, who's 4-6-1. They're not doing as well either. Both of them have negative goal differentials. And, they're teams that the Ducks should beat. So, you can't look past Pittsburgh. Obviously, you've got to go into this game full force, and it's going to be a battle. Pittsburgh's 6-2-1, and they're not as good on the road. They're, 1-2. So the Ducks, can hopefully take it to them. But I think the key is if the Ducks just play like they did against LA last night, they'll be fine. I don't expect them to be as much, as far as the fisticuffs and whatnot, because it's Pittsburgh. But if the Ducks play, their same physical style and do what they're doing, making the good passes, not giving up too many solid scoring chances, the face-off is going to be interesting too, because Pittsburgh's a pretty decent face-off team too, so that's going to be a key in this game as well. But I look for the Ducks. If they're going to drop one, though, I don't want them to, but Pittsburgh would be the one I would think, Eddie, of these next 3 games here that's going to be the toughest.
Yeah, for sure. But we could potentially see a lot of goals here. You look at Pittsburgh, and they're 21st in goals against per game. They're letting an average of 3 goals per game right now, so that's something that we could look to exploit. Hopefully, obviously, Marc-Andre Fleury has been good for them this season. He'll most likely go today. They didn't play. Their last game was against the Flyers, and it wasn't yesterday, so they'll be able to put him in that. Obviously the big thing with them right now is their power play. They're 4th in the league, so I think the key for the Ducks tonight is to stay out of the box, and I think they'll be good there. But we could see a couple barn burners in the next few games. Calgary, their goals against average is 3.55. It's 4th last in the NHL, but they're scoring 2.8 goals per game. That could be a pretty big game for the Ducks as well. And then you look at Arizona; they're the worst team defensively in the NHL. And then they have also scored 3 goals per game as well. So they're sitting in the top 10 for goals per game. So a little bit of a, we're used to it against Calgary. We always usually see like a 5-4 game. So we'll probably see that again. But for Arizona, it could be the same thing as well. Both Calgary and Arizona are kind of in the same spot. Defensively, they're pretty poor, but they're scoring a lot of goals, and their their special teams are bad on both sides of the game. So I think, like you said, the toughest game will definitely be Pittsburgh. There are no easy games in the NHL, but I think with how Arizona and Calgary are struggling defensively right now, the Ducks can take advantage of that. And these are 4-point games. These are 2 big games, Pacific Division games that, at home you should be winning both of them. So if the Ducks can come out of this a little bit of a 3-game homestand and have at least 2 wins here, I think it'll be big for them.
Yeah, exactly, and I agree. I think 2 out of 3 is what you expect, and if they do 3 out of 3, that'd be fantastic. And at this time, we'll get to the fan questions, because it goes into all of the stuff that we're talking about now. And we looked at the first 10 games this season. The Ducks are 4-4-2, and we have Darren ask us a question about Carlyle. What do we think about his performance thus far? And, I actually talked about this on a show last night, KLBC.org, the Jay Money Show, which they had me on there last night. We were talking about this and what we thought of of Carlyle and his performance so far. And, I kind of in the middle of the road, Eddie. I don't think he gets an A. I don't think he gets a C. I kind of think he's, B minus, somewhere in there. I think, with him coming in, obviously there was, some anxiety with some of the fans because he'd been on the team before, and left in the, uneven terms and whatnot. And, there was some concern. And I think the way it's gone so far it's been pretty good. I think not having Rakell, not having Lindholm, and going with what he's been working with, and Bernie being out here for a week as well. I think he's done pretty decently as the coach. I mean, he's put the lines together. He hasn't jumbled them up too much. We've seen Richie with the Twins, and then the Kessler lines went back together. He's really only had to mess around with the third and fourth lines so much. The defensive pairings, obviously he had to change up when Dupre went down earlier in the season. But I'd say overall he's been doing pretty good as the coach. I mean, I think there is room for improvement for this team. But I mean, compared to last season going 1-7-2, I think you have to be pretty happy with the Ducks. After those first 3 or 4 games, like you said, going 4-1-1. So I'm pretty happy with the way Carlyle's performed so far. I mean, it's an early season; it's only 10 games. You have 72 more to go. But I like what I see so far.
Yeah, and I think a big thing is he's gotten a lot out of Getzlaf and Perry, and what you would expect to get out of those players, and they both picked up points last night as well. So I think it's huge to get a good start out of those guys. And they've also got depth scoring from Cogliano and from Fowler and from Silverberg and Kessler so far from the beginning part of the season here. So I think, I mean, like you said, you can't give him an A, I don't think, because of the start that they had, the 0-3-1 start. But after that, they've been great in the last 6 games, like we said. Of course, barring that little stretch there against Columbus, but I think they've been good, and I think he's been good. And I think being able to solidify 2 solid lines to start the season there with the Ritchie line with the Twins, and obviously the Kessler Cogliano Silverberg line. I think that was huge for them to get that chemistry in there right away. And you look at how good the Getzlaf, Perry, and Ritchie line has been, especially possession numbers so far this season. I think that's huge for them as well. So it's nice to see that, and I think he's been good so far. And if they can continue the recent success that they've had, I think it will bode well for them. And I think this is a team that's going to compete and do well. And I think that if they can keep playing the way that they're playing, they're going to have a good season.
Yeah, I agree, and I think the biggest key too is the way that they've been doing in the face-off. They've been killing it. They've been first in the league almost the whole season, which has been huge. And now not only do they win the face-off, they possess the puck and get the forecheck going. And when they're doing that, I mean, they're winning the games. I mean, that's what it comes down to. I mean, yeah, the puck possession analytics stuff, of course, it's important. If you have the puck more than the other team, I mean, it's not a sure thing you're gonna win the game, but you're definitely gonna have better chances, and that's what the Ducks have been doing. And we know that Carlyle's big on special teams. The power play has been doing pretty well. The penalty kill's been so depends on how the game's going. They're doing okay, not terrible, but they can improve there a little bit. But I think that's the key, is not changing up the lines too much, building the chemistry, and that leads us to another question that Mike asks us about. He asks, with Rakell coming back, what do we think that the lines will be? Well, and I would have said before last night, I would have said it's still going to be, the Twins with Richie and then the Kessler line, of course. And now we have to see what's going on with Richie and find out what, his situation. But if Richie's okay and he stays where he's at, then I like this third line that they had last night, Eddie. I liked Camerosa, Vermette, and Rakell. I mean, they did well. They had a lot of chemistry. You saw Rakell with the 3 points, Camerosa getting his first goal, Vermette getting on the board too. I mean, I like that line. So I think that that's what the Ducks should go with, unless Richie's going to be out. But I would keep those 3 together. And then obviously the fourth line is the line that you obviously rotate around. But last night was Garbutt, Wagner, and Bowl, which is probably what you're going to see, unless they bring Sarvosa back up or Edom or something like that. But I like how this third line worked, and that's what I would go with for now.
Yeah, I think it works good. I mean, we talked about possibly playing Rakell at center and pushing Vermette down to the fourth line. But I think how they played last night worked out. I think Vermette's a good enough player offensively to put with Rakell, and obviously he's defensively responsible. That gives Rakell a little bit more freedom to do what he wants and be more creative, and I think that's good for him. I mean, playing him with either Kessler or Vermette could have the same effect, but I think obviously with that how well that Kessler line's been playing, it makes sense to play him with Vermette, and obviously he can either play right or left, so that gives you a little bit of freedom if you want to switch up Camerosa and play somebody else on that line as well. But I think they all played really well last night, and you saw that in the way that line played. It was the best line of the night. Rakell scored a goal. Vermette had a goal on the power play from Rakell, and then obviously Cramarosa got a goal on an assist from Rakell as well. So I think that line was the best last night, and I wouldn't be surprised to see it be exactly the same today. It all, like you said, it all depends on if Richie is ready to go or not. But I think even if he's not, we might still see that line together based on how well they played last night. It'll be interesting to see what they do if he isn't ready to go.
Yeah, they may have to call up somebody else, and that's been kind of the hot topic this last week or two. I know a lot of people have been following the call-ups and all of that, and that was kind of another part to Mike's question. He also asked about the lineup when Lindholm comes back, which it's a little bit simpler, but we've seen Theodore going up and down either the 5 freeway or the train. I don't know what he's doing going between San Diego and Anaheim, but he's been going up and down, because of the cap issues and whatnot, and how the Ducks are, kind of, on that borderline. It seems to be the reason why he keeps coming up and down. But I think that's going to be put to an end. Lindholm will come back. We don't know exactly when. We hope maybe by this weekend, if not, next week, depending on the visa issue and obviously flying back. But once he comes back, that's really going to solidify the defense. You have Fowler and Manson. Stoner's been in there with Vatanen. You've seen Bieksa in there. So, I think those are your top 6 you're going to see. I think Theodore would go back down so he can get more of that playing time, obviously. And then, of course, the Ducks have Holzer as the 7th guy that can come in. I don't really see too much of an issue on the blue line. That's pretty much, I think, what you're going to get is probably Holzer and Stoner rotating in here and there with the other 5 guys. That's kind of what I see, Eddie. I don't really see too many more changes going on, which will be a good thing because we keep getting these recalls and reassign notices and all this stuff, and maybe that'll kind of peter out here for a little while.
Yeah, you would think so. It's not like Shea's played bad, and it's not like he doesn't deserve to be up here, but I think it makes it a lot easier for the Ducks that when Lindholm is back and ready to play, that Shea goes down and gets some top line minutes playing in the AHL. If he was to play up here when Lindholm comes back, he'd be playing third pairing. He'd be getting maybe 15 to 16 minutes a night, and I think he'll benefit more from playing 20 to 22 minutes down in the AHL. So I think that's what we'll most likely see from him. Obviously, if there's an injury before then obviously he'll stay up. But it makes sense to have Stoner and Holzer be the 6 and 7 guys for now, and then eventually, if a trade is made later on in the season, you can call Theodore back up, or if an injury comes up, you can call him up. And you look at how Montour's playing down in the AHL too. It looks like he's almost ready to get a couple call-ups this season too. So I think the Ducks are pretty good on the blue line right now. I think they're not going to have a lot of issues for this season, even if there are any injuries.
Yeah, speaking about Lindholm and trades and all that stuff, that's really the hot topic now with this team is since Lindholm has, come back, not quite officially, obviously in the next week or so, but with him coming back, the cap issues and whatnot, we had several fan questions about trades and the deadline, what are the Ducks going to do next? How are they going to handle the situation? We had Alex threw out some trade proposals. He said, what about the Ducks trading Fowler? Maybe getting some top draft picks. He also mentioned Bieksa and Stoner. And we also had Garrett ask us a really great question about this too. He said, "Hey, is Fowler still going to be a Duck come the trade deadline?" And these are the hard questions, Eddie. These are the tough ones. I think if I was Murray and I was trying to make some deals and I was trying to move some people around, yes, I would love to keep Fowler and Lindholm, of course, and those are your guys that have been doing so well. And you'd want to try to move a Bieksa or a Stoner or even a Dupre. But I think all those guys are too difficult to move, unfortunately. We saw Stoner go down on waivers. The Ducks tried to make that move, obviously, to see if someone would pick him up. Of course, no one bit the bait on that. Dupre, I hate to say it, but unfortunately he's damaged goods right now with the concussion issues, which, we still don't know if he's even going to come back, which is just a sad situation for him, outside of the world of hockey. Just health-wise, you want to see him get, better and not have these symptoms of what's going on, which is just unfortunate for him. But, no one's going to go after him because he's got to deal with all that stuff. And you look at Bieksa, obviously he has a bigger contract that you'd want to move, but he's told Bob Murray that he's going to waive his no movement clause for the expansion draft. But I don't see him doing it for trading. So, I mean, what does that leave you with? It all comes back to Fowler, unfortunately, and that's not what you wish or want. But he's been playing so well, and it seems like that's kind of the name that's going to be hanging out there maybe till the trade deadline, Eddie.
Yeah, and it really is the only one that kind of makes sense, like you said, that can really happen right now. Nobody's going to take Dupre with the injury and the concussions and everything like that. Nobody can really take BX unless he waives his no move clause, and I don't see him doing that, like you said, for a trade. And we've seen them try and drop Stoner to waivers and get him picked up, and I'm sure they most likely attempted to trade him at one point as well, before Lindholm was signed, and that didn't seem to work out. And those are really your only three options other than trading Fowler. So it really just comes down to, if they need the cap space, he's the most likely guy to go still. And obviously it's nice to have him right now, and he started the season great for him and everything like that. But you look at some of the things that Alex proposed. He said, you could either move Fowler in a pick or BX and Stoner in the same thing, or you could move Theodore and Montour. And I think, well, I think all of us would love to to definitely keep Theodore and for sure to at least give Montour a shot before you end up trading him, and before you even see what kind of defenseman you have. So I think it just makes sense to trade Fowler in the long run, if you do, for one, need a scorer near the trade deadline, and two, you need a little bit of cap relief come that time. So obviously, it's something we won't see happen now, and I think that's good. I think the Ducks can get on a roll and be good right now. But come the trade deadline, do I think Fowler is going to be a Duck still? I honestly don't. I think if they need goal scoring and if they need the cap relief, he's the guy who's most likely to go right now.
Yeah, I mean, with the way he's playing too, scoring goals, playing solid defense, doing great on the special teams. I mean, like you said, if the Ducks need cap space and they need an offense, that's the way to go. The only other situation that I could see is if Dupre is unable to play, the Ducks buy out his contract. They would still have some of that contract against the cap. I don't know exactly how much, but there would be some against the cap there. And if the Ducks decided not to bring back Nate Thompson and trade him, that maybe there'd be enough wiggle room there. Might be still a little bit, over the cap space there. They'd have to figure it out and maybe make some other minor move or something like that. But that's really the only other, option I can really see, is that they do something like that to keep Fowler on the team. And right now, the way the Ducks are doing in the faceoff circle, I like Nate Thompson, but they really don't need him back. Not now, at least. I mean, obviously it's a long season. There can be injuries and everything, but when you've got Vermette, Kessler, and Getzlaf, I mean, they're killing it in the faceoff circle. Vermette was 70% entering last night. Now he's a little bit less than that. And then you've got Kessler and Getzlaf just under 60%. I mean, those guys are killing it. And now you've got Wagner and Rakell that can come in and take faceoffs as well. I mean, both of them, they're a little less than 50%, but Nate Thompson isn't as valuable to this team right now. I'm not saying that they shouldn't bring him out, they shouldn't keep him. I mean, don't get me wrong, he's much better in the faceoff circle than Rakell and Wagner are. But it's, in terms of overall with the team and the center depth, I mean, there's a possibility that maybe they move him, and with Dupre, they buy out his contract. But I don't know if that would get him enough either. So it's a tough situation, Eddie. I mean, that's really the only other alternative other than trading Fowler.
Yeah, I think it's possible. Realistically, I think Thompson probably comes in for Cramarosa when he's good and ready to play, and he most likely lines up as the fourth line center. And then you've got probably the best center lineup in the NHL in terms of being able to win faceoffs, and having Getzlaf, Kessler, Vermette, and Thompson. You've got guys right there that can easily be over 50% on any given night. So I think that's the most likely situation. And you got to think too, when Thompson does come back, and somebody does have to go down, so you don't feel the full force of the 1.6 million. If it is, for example, Cramarosa who does go back down, you do get the relief of Cramarosa's 700,000. So Thompson coming back is only about $900,000 extra. But obviously that still puts them over. They're gonna have a lot of issues there. Buying out Dupre, I think it's a tricky situation because of how many years he has left. I mean, he's still under contract with the Ducks until 2021-22. He's making $3.7 million. I'm not exactly sure either how much money he would how much money would be going to like against the salary if they did buy him out. You look at the only Ducks player that is bought out right now that's kind of against the cap is Mark Fistrick, and it's about 450,000 that's going against the cap, and his salary was probably under $1 million. So you could imagine how much is going to go against the cap if it's 3.7 million. So I don't think it's something they do, but it is an option, like you said, and if they don't want to trade a guy, that's a possibility for them.
And I think another thing to factor into all of this too, and this is what Crystal asks us about, is the expansion draft. That's coming up too, and that's going to have to play into this as far as what the Ducks are going to want to do. As I mentioned before, I had talked about Murray about Bieksa, and Bieksa said that he would waive his no movement clause for the expansion draft, which it's actually in the rules. They're allowed to make that move, so that way they can go with either option A or option B in the expansion draft. And we know that the Ducks are, I mean, not for sure, but I'm pretty sure they're going to go with option A, where they're going to protect 7 forwards and 3 defensemen. So when you look in the forward situation, it's kind of a no-brainer. Obviously, you've got the big 3, Perry, Getzlaf, and Kessler. They're going to keep those guys. Rakell, Silverberg, Cogliano would be the other 3. And then most likely the 7th one would be Wagner in this group that the Ducks would keep in the forwards. In terms of defense, that's where the issue comes up here, because even with the Ducks having BX and waiving that, now you got to protect 3. And, I mean, this is tough. I mean, you've got Lindholm, Vatanen, Fowler, and Manson. I mean, those are the 4 that you'd really want the Ducks to keep. So, I mean, it kind of leans towards that notion of what you're talking about, Eddie, because if the Ducks trade Fowler, they could bring in another forward, and then obviously they would protect Lindholm, Vatanen, and Manson. Because those are the big ones that they'd be concerned about. So, the whole expansion draft thing plays into this too. And I really think it points towards what you're saying, that, come the trade deadline, it's unfortunate, but it all comes back and points to Cam.
Yeah, and you're right. I mean, you look at the forwards, and it's going to be Perry, Getzlaf, Kessler, Rakell, Silverberg, Cogliano, and then the 7th, it could either be, like you said, Wagner. It could be Vermette if they do want to keep him. Richie doesn't count because he's still in the entry level, and he won't have to protect him. And then on defense, it's obviously Lindholm, Vatanen, and then right now it would be Fowler. And then you look at the guy, and then obviously Gibson and Nat, and you look at the guys who are unprotected that a team will most likely take, and you would assume that out of the guys on forward and the guys on defense, you would assume that the most likely guy to be taken is Josh Manson. I don't think anybody really wants to lose him right now. So it's an interesting situation, because if you do go out and you trade a guy like Fowler for a forward, for a top 6 forward, that is your 7th forward who you now can protect, and then you can still protect Josh Manson, and then I think that's a better layout. I think that's a layout that the Ducks would rather have than to lose a guy like Josh Manson for nothing. So I think that's still a possibility. And like I said before, do I still think Fowler's going to be a Duck at the deadline? Personally, no, but I think it depends on a lot of situations and how the Ducks are playing. There's a lot of hockey from now into the trade deadline. There's a lot of things that could happen. If the Ducks are scoring goals for fun, or if they're in the top half of the league for goals per game, I think that he could still be here. But you never know. I mean, like I said, there's a lot of hockey between now and then. There's a lot of things that are going into this decision, like how the Ducks are playing, expansion draft, like you said, and a lot of other things. So it'll be interesting to see how they deal with this. But I think the good thing right now is that they don't have to deal with it right now, and they can focus on just playing hockey.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, they're going to focus on playing hockey right now. You still got November, December, January, pretty much before something has to be done. The timetable for Nate Thompson to come back, they said, was February, March, somewhere in there. I mean, we saw him come back sooner last time, so maybe January, but at least the Ducks have those 3 months before the trade deadline to look over all this, figure it out. Like you said, it's a long season. Players underperform, players overperform, players get injured. I mean, we saw last year the Ducks season took so many turns. I mean, it was crazy. It was like taking a ride at Disneyland. I mean, they were just going up and down and all over the place. I mean, it was like going on Space Mountain with the Ducks last year. I mean, you just didn't know which way they were going to turn because of so many injuries last year. And right now, obviously there's a couple that they're dealing with now, like we talked about Bernier and Ritchie, unfortunately, and Dupre, of course. So we're just going to wait and see. The Ducks are going to focus this next 3 months. They're playing better right now. You have to be happy with the way that they've done in these last 6 games, winning, 4 of them. And with that, we'll be back next week. We'll do another podcast. And, this podcast this time around has also been sponsored again by Sons of Hockey. Check out their T-shirts at sonsofhockey.com. They've got a lot of great stuff on there. They've got stuff not just for Ducks, but other teams as well. So check them out and see what they got on there. Josh runs that website. He's a good friend of ours, and I can't speak highly of him anymore. I mean, he's a good dude, and check out his stuff. And for those of you that were at FanFest too, I appreciate it. I saw a bunch of you out there. It was a good time. We got rained on, but it was fun. Light drizzle. And we'll see you guys around at Honda Center the next week. And let's go Ducks.